Stop Killing Games wasn't some fringe protest, it was a carefully planned initiative built from years of frustration over one simple issue. When people buy games, they should be able to keep playing them. After Ubisoft revoked access to The Crew, a paid game made entirely unplayable despite having a dormant offline mode, campaign organiser Ross Scott launched a European Citizens Initiative as part of a broader global push to challenge this increasingly common abuse. But for months, the movement struggled to break through. This was, of course, until a popular streamer, Pirate Software, posted a video attacking it. His confident but misleading take misrepresented the campaign's aims, sparking a wave of backlash that eventually turned into curiosity and then, unexpectedly, into mass support. The resulting Streisand effect helped push the petition past 1 million signatures, forcing EU lawmakers to formally address the issue. But, of course, the story is far from over yet. Now, with legislation on the table, the industry is fighting back. Within days, dubious lobbyists representing gaming's largest publishers under the banner of Video Games Europe issued a public statement dismissing the initiative, warning that it could curtail developer choice. That's lobbying speak for, we don't want the law to change and you will own nothing and like it. The irony is that while Pirate Software, charlatan that he is, has become the face of the drama, he was never the real threat or the real target. He's just a loud distraction who exists while the actual real villains are already making moves behind closed doors. I am, of course, not talking about influencers or developers, but lobbyists, unelected, unaccountable, shady groups backed by the richest corporations in gaming. And if they succeed, your ability to own the games you pay for will vanish entirely. So with that said, if you like uploads about the truth and your content spicy, then hit that subscribe button, as this video isn't just about what's happening to games, it's about who's trying to make sure that nothing changes. I am Lady Decade. Let's talk about who wants to kill your games and your rights. While much of AAA gaming continues its slow collapse into corporate nonsense where games vanish overnight and you don't even own what you buy, not everything is lost. Some developers still believe in making real games that don't require a constant online connection just to exist. Games you can actually keep. Using my affiliate link below, you can grab some of the most exciting titles for a fraction of the usual price. Get over 30% off the beautiful turn-based RPG Petition 33, the jaw-dropping action of Stellar Blade, the mythic depth of Black Myth Wukong, and even secure a huge discount on your Wu Chang Fallen Feathers pre-order. But that's just the start. There are thousands more with up to 90% off. These aren't just fleeting life service experiments, they're proper games made by people who still respect players, and they deserve a place in your library. Happy shopping. Now back to the video. The practice of killing games, shutting down servers, revoking access, and rendering purchased titles unplayable has quietly become a standard industry tactic. What once felt like rare exceptions are now features of the business model, and no case illustrates this shift more clearly than The Crew. Ubisoft's 2014 online racing game was delisted from sale in December 2023. Players were warned that servers would shut down on the 31st of March 2024, but many assumed this would only affect multiplayer. Instead, The Crew became completely unplayable. Even players with physical discs found themselves locked out by a message that read, "You no longer have access to this game. Why not check the store to pursue your adventures?" This wasn't because of a technical limitation. This was a decision. What made matters even worse is that later modders uncovered a hidden offline mode buried in the game's code, a boot menu with both play online and play offline options. As one developer noted, Ubisoft could have restored basic functionality simply by flipping a switch, but they didn't. They didn't because they didn't want to. Disabling access wasn't a necessity, it was a choice. And Ubisoft's legal response made their position painfully clear. In a class action lawsuit filed in California, the company argued that consumers never actually owned the game, not even those who purchased physical copies. What players were sold, according to Ubisoft, was a limited revocable license, and that the company could terminate it at will. They literally want us to pay for everything, yet own nothing. Completely one-way transactions in their favour. What is more disturbing is that this is far from an isolated incident. Publishers have been quietly shuttering games across the board. EA shut down servers for Battlefield Bad Company 2, Crysis 3 and Dead Space 2. Activision took 10 Call of Duty titles offline simultaneously, citing vague maintenance. Spellbreak, a live service battle royale, was shut down just after 4 years. The Korean MMO Grand Saga, reportedly developed with a $25 million budget, lasted only 4 months. And Babylon's Fall from Platinum Games was delisted and disabled less than a year after launch. These weren't all failures. Some had small but active communities, some had single-player content, some had only recently launched. But it doesn't matter when a publisher decides that a game is no longer profitable or simply inconvenient. They kill it, regardless of what players paid or how much time they had invested in previously. As Alexei Vialichin, a core figure in the Stop Killing Games campaign, put it, "This service doesn't have an expiration date that you would know of. You can get robbed, so to speak, at any time." And that's the quiet reality of modern digital ownership. People are paying full price for products that can be disabled remotely without warning, without consent and without recourse. One report captured it succinctly. What this means is that something you've spent your hard-earned money on will no longer exist, even if you have a physical copy. It's just gone. Finito. Games in 2025 aren't sold, they're leased, and when they disappear, they don't just vanish from storefronts, they vanish from your library, your hard drive, your history. Forums become digital graveyards full of players mourning lost titles. Years of community building, competitive progress, and personal investment are erased in an instant, often to save a few server costs. And now lawsuits are emerging that argue that this behaviour isn't just anti-consumer, it's fraudulent. The industry markets permanence, but delivers volatility. Consumers believe that they're buying products, but what they're actually receiving is a permission slip that can be revoked without warning. This is the world that Stop Killing Games was built to challenge. Because the problem isn't just that games are disappearing, it's that the people paying for them are being treated like they were never part of the equation. Still, many critics continue to misrepresent the initiative, insisting that it would somehow ban live service games or force companies to run servers indefinitely, but that was never the goal. The petition's demands are modest and precise. Number 1. Games should remain functional when official support ends. This doesn't mean servers must run forever, it means users should still be able to access the product that they paid for, even if the online features disappear. Number 2, publishers should release offline modes, enable peer-to-peer networking, or provide server code where appropriate. Basically, this ensures basic continuity, enough for preservation, accessibility, and fair use. And number 3, these rules apply only at the end of life. The initiative doesn't interfere with how games are made, monetized, or updated during their active lifespan. It simply ensures that once a publisher walks away, they don't take your purchase with them. This isn't some radical demand, it's the same principle underpinning consumer protection in every other industry. If you buy a car, you expect it to drive even after the dealership closes. If you buy a book, you expect to read it even after the publisher stops printing. Gaming is the outlier, an industry where products can be deleted, revoked, and denied after purchase. What Stop Killing Games is asking for is very simple. decency. A future where ownership actually means something. A future where consumers don't get left with nothing but broken icons and deleted titles. A future where we stop treating digital goods as disposable, even when the corporations do. But that hasn't stopped white knights rallying in favour of corporate interests. At the centre of the drama, one name keeps reappearing. Pirate Software, real name Jason Hall. He's a former Blizzard engineer turned streamer, best known for running a small indie studio and hosting regular Twitch broadcasts where he answers questions about the industry in a confident TED Talk-esque manner. He released a video criticising the Stop Killing Games initiative. On the surface, it looked like an informed, thoughtful critique from someone with industry experience, but beneath the polished delivery was a cascade of misrepresentations. He claimed the initiative would negatively impact every live service game, that it would legally force developers to maintain servers forever, and that it would fundamentally break how games are made. But the problem was, none of that was true. As Ross Scott later put it bluntly, he completely made that up. The petition never demanded perpetual server support, it didn't call for interference in the normal development cycle of live games, and it certainly didn't impose one-size-fits-all technical mandates. What Hall was attacking wasn't the campaign itself. It was a caricature of it, built from misunderstandings and extrapolations that had no basis in the actual proposal. But he delivered his take using the language of technical authorities, sprinkling in just enough jargon and software lingo to sound convincing. Because of his background as a developer, his audience gave him the benefit of the doubt. Confidence was mistaken for correctness, and that's the problem. This is a dynamic that repeats constantly in tech spaces. Influencers present their opinions as facts, and their audiences, many of whom lack the time or expertise to verify details, accept them as gospel. I've personally felt the impact of this dynamic. When I released a video criticising Steam's anti-consumer practices, I looked at an ongoing class action lawsuit against them. Pirate Software took a contrary oppositional stance against the suit, a suit designed to protect consumers. Doing so is absolutely fine, but what followed wasn't a debate. It was pure abuse. Obviously, he didn't send his audience after me. He likely doesn't even know I exist. However, as my take was different from his audience flooded my comment section, typing in this same cadence and smug arrogance as Thor, calling me an idiot, among other things, for having the audacity to defend consumers. I was dislike bombed, ridiculed, and accused of not understanding the industry, all because a popular tech guy had confidently waved the issue away. To be clear, I don't particularly care about it. That's part and parcel of being on YouTube. I'm just bringing it up as the response drew a lot of parallels with what happened with his other responses to situations. The main point here is that Hall didn't just misrepresent the Stop Killing Games initiative, he did so loudly and with the same level of unearned authority as he did when discussing a range of other topics too. He regularly turns legal conversations into a tribal shouting match and reduces serious consumer rights issues to essentially us peasants being stupid and not as informed as he apparently is, and in doing so, he helped derail public understanding of Stop Killing Games. Ironically, that blunder may have helped more than it hurt. The backlash to Hall's video triggered a Streisand effect, drawing attention to the very campaign he tried to undermine. Between late June and early July 2025, the petition gained nearly 500,000 signatures, more than any previous week in its history. In the end, his attempt to kill the movement gave it its biggest boost. In total, 23 EU countries met their national signature quotas. Slovenia hit 100.23% of its target. Bulgaria reached 94.89%. Only Luxembourg, Malta and Cyprus fell short. A parallel petition in the UK also crossed 100,000 signatures, triggering parliamentary discussion. This wasn't just a European flashpoint, it was a global uprising against a broken norm. But despite the campaign's success so far, pirate software has become the story. His face, his name, his drama, that's what people are talking about, and that's a problem because Jason Hall isn't the biggest villain here, he's a decoy. He's loud, he's visible, he's endlessly quotable. That makes him perfect for internet outrage. People can roast him, meme him, and dunk on him. But while everyone's focused on Thor, the real villains are already at work, quietly lobbying, attempting to reshape laws and ensure that consumer rights that we're fighting for never make it into policy. So let's talk about what we should be collectively really concerning ourselves with. With Stop Killing Games crossing the multi-million signature threshold and gaining formal legal recognition, it didn't take long for the industry to strike back. Within hours of the campaign's success, a statement appeared, this time from a group calling itself Video Games Europe, or VGE. At a glance, VGE presents itself as an advocacy group for Europe's games industry, but in reality, it's a trade association, a well-funded lobbying vehicle representing some of the richest and most powerful corporations in gaming. Its members include EA, Ubisoft, Riot Games, Activision Blizzard, Microsoft, Nintendo of Europe, and more than 40 other major publishers and platforms. This wasn't an organic grassroots response from concerned developers, it was a unified voice of gaming's largest stakeholders, and their message was unambiguous. In a public statement, VGE warned that the proposals in Stop Killing Games would curtail developer choice and make games prohibitively expensive to create. This language wasn't accidental, it was carefully chosen to flip the narrative, casting a campaign for basic consumer protections as a threat to creativity and viability. The implication is, regulate us and we won't be able to afford to make games anymore. This is classic lobbying rhetoric. Regulation is never a safeguard, it's painted as a burden. Any attempt to introduce accountability becomes, in their framing, an existential threat to innovation. As one gaming analyst put it bluntly, VGE works for video game companies, not for the government or for players. That distinction matters because VGE doesn't serve the public, it answers only to its members. It's not bound by elections, accountability, or democratic norms. Its job is to protect profit and ensure that nothing, not even 1 million signatures, gets in the way of that. And the timing of their response was just as revealing as its content. The VGE statement went live within hours of the petition hitting its target. Proof that lobbying groups have pre-written talking points ready to deploy as the first sign of political traction. When legislation threatens to shift, they move fast. Not just to respond, but to control the narrative. It's absolutely vile. But sadly, this is how modern lobbying works. Trade associations like VGE act as the front line of influence. They issue public statements, pressure lawmakers in private, and use language designed to confuse consumers whilst soothing shareholders. They offer corporations plausible deniability. When VGE speaks, no single company is blamed, but all of them benefit. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. Brussels is the second most lobbied city in the world, behind only Washington, D.C. Over 25,000 lobbyists are registered there, many of them with direct access to lawmakers. But unlike the US, the European Commission, the body that drafts new laws, is unelected. Its members are appointed, which means lobbyists don't need to convince voters. They just need to influence a handful of bureaucrats behind closed doors. This is why Stop Killing Games is such a threat. It sidestepped the traditional pathways and forced the Commission to address something it would have otherwise ignored. It's brought the debate out of the boardrooms and into the public, and now the counter-offensive has begun. Right on schedule. Pirate Software was never the final boss, he was the warm-up fight. The real villains don't upload videos, they don't debate on Twitch. They work quietly, writing letters, holding meetings, and making sure that by the time a law reaches the floor, it's already been watered down into irrelevance. The backlash from VGE isn't a conclusion, it's just Act 1 of their pushback, and it's playing out exactly where they wanted it. Behind closed doors, inside the most lobby institution in Europe. The Stop Killing Games campaign doesn't just expose a problem with digital ownership, it exposes something far bigger, the quiet machinery of corporate lobbying, how it shapes the rules that we live under without transparency, without accountability, and without consent. At the heart of the system is the European Commission, the EU's executive branch and the only body allowed to propose new laws. Unlike national governments, the Commission isn't elected. Its members are appointed by national leaders, and once installed, they alone decide which laws are drafted, debated and introduced. Not the European Parliament, not the Council of Ministers, just them. That means for over 400 million EU citizens, the people making the rules were never on a ballot. And that's exactly where lobbying thrives. According to multiple studies, over 75% of lobbying meetups in Brussels are with big business. Not consumer groups, not watchdog organisations, just corporations. With more than 25,000 lobbyists registered in the city, Brussels has become the second most lobbied capital on earth, as mentioned earlier, trailing only behind Washington DC. But this isn't a conspiracy, it's a feature. It's how the system is built. When unelected officials draft legislation behind closed doors, the only thing that matters is who gets in the room. And lobbyists don't wait to be invited, they're already there, armed with resources, legal teams and pre-written policy. This isn't hypothetical, we just watched it happen. The moment Stop Killing Games reached 1 million verified signatures, lobbyists were ready with a pre-packaged statement to smother the momentum before it could spread. This isn't a debate, it's damage control. Now, I want to speak personally for a moment because the very existence of the European Commission is the main reason I voted for Brexit. Not because I hate immigrants, not because I was scared about borders, but because I understood how the system works. Taking back control wasn't some nationalist slogan for me, it was about democratic accountability. In the UK, we can vote out the people who govern us. In the EU Commission, we can't. Full stop. For years, both sides of the British political spectrum, especially the old left, were deeply critical of the EU's democratic deficit. They saw how big business could shape policy while ordinary citizens were sidelined. But somewhere along the way, the conversation was hijacked. Now, if you criticise the EU, you're branded a xenophobe. If you point out the role of lobbying, you're dismissed as a crank. The left and the right scream about borders and racism while the real puppet masters largely carried on uninterrupted, rewriting the law in boardrooms. This isn't to say that the UK or the US are immune to lobbying, because they aren't, but the scale and opacity of the EU system makes it worse. There are fewer checks, less visibility, and almost no direct recourse. It's a lobbyist's paradise, propped up by technocratic language and diplomatic ceremony. So when people ask how something as reasonable as Stop Killing Games, a campaign for basic digital rights, could provoke such a swift and hostile response from the industry, the answer is simple. This is how the system works. The corporations didn't panic, they didn't scramble, they had already got people in the room ready to kill it quietly. And this is what take back control meant to many of us. It wasn't about hate, it wasn't about nostalgia, it was about the basic belief that ordinary people should have a say in the systems that govern them. That democratic structure shouldn't be for sale, that multinational publishers shouldn't be able to squash legislation just because it might cost them money. So yes, this fight is about video games, but it's also about more than that. It's about who has the power, who gets heard, and what it takes to push back when the rules are designed to keep you out. It's mega easy to feel cynical when you see how lobbying works. The money, the access, the sheer speed at which corporate interests move. It can feel unbeatable, but here's the thing. There is some good news in all of this. In the past, the EU has resisted them before, and when it does, the results are undeniable. Take the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. Before it came into force in 2018, most companies could harvest, store and exploit your personal data with virtually no consequence. GDPR changed that, not just in Europe, but globally. Even American tech giants had to comply because Europe refused to lower its standards. For the first time in modern digital history, people had rights over their own information, and that started in Brussels. Or look at mobile roaming charges. For decades, travelling within the EU meant getting stung by ridiculous phone bills. Then in 2017, the EU banned roaming fees across member states, forcing telecom giants to adapt. It was, in the words of the European Commission, one of the greatest and most tangible successes of the EU. More recently, the Digital Services Act brought new levels of accountability to online platforms. It forced companies like Meta, Google and TikTok to be transparent about their algorithms, their moderation decisions and how they target advertising. And with the AI Act, the EU became the first major body to pass binding legislation around artificial intelligence, prioritising transparency, safety and consumer rights before the technology spirals any further out of control. These are all examples of the same thing. Organised pressure overcoming corporate resistance, and eventually real policy change. Which fortunately means that the same is still possible with Stop Killing Games. At this point, this petition isn't asking for miracles, it's asking for the bare minimum. If you buy a product, you should be allowed to keep it. If a publisher wants to shut down support, fine. But don't make the game vanish from people's libraries. Don't kill something that they paid for. And despite the industry pushback, the fact that this petition succeeded in becoming a formal legislative initiative is itself proof of momentum. The EU has acted before when enough people demanded it, therefore it can act again, despite the power and influence of lobbyists and the undemocratic practices of the Commission. The goal here isn't to burn the system down, it's to pressure it loudly and relentlessly until it does what it was supposed to do in the first place. Protect people, not just profits. What can we make of all of this? Well, for me personally, I think as a collective we waste far too much time shouting at the wrong people. Yes, Pirate Software misrepresented the petition. Yes, he postured as the smartest man in the room, wielding his credentials like a shield. And yes, he delivers smug half-truths with that insufferable TED talk tone, confident his audience won't question him. Yep, he is a massive charlatan, but he's not the one sitting in the back rooms with lawmakers. He's not the one helping rewrite the legal definition of ownership. He's not the threat. He's just distracting us. The real danger in this scenario thus far is Video Games Europe, a lobbying machine bankrolled by the wealthiest publishers in the world. Their mission is simple: ensure that the games you buy can be revoked at any time without warning and without recourse. They don't want to debate. They don't want you to pay attention to them. They want the outrage to stay locked onto influencers, not contracts, not control. None of this should be about whether you like Ross Scott or hate Jason Hall. It's about something bigger. Are your purchases real or just permissions? Do you own what you pay for? Or are we all just leasing access on terms we don't get to read from companies that can take it all away? So if this matters to you, don't let Video Games Europe hijack the narrative. Keep pushing the petition. Keep talking about stop killing games. Keep calmly explaining it when others misrepresent it. And above all, stop taking the bait. Don't waste your energy on influencers chasing clouds. Focus on the system they're shielding, whether they know it or not, because this isn't just about gaming. It's about the future of digital ownership, and we need to win. Don't forget, you can grab over 30% off titles like Expedition 33, Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, and even get a big discount on your Wu Chang Fallen Feathers pre-order. These are the sorts of games worth experiencing. And if you really like this channel, you can also gain access to my behind-the-scenes cosplay library by becoming a backer over on Patreon. I look forward to speaking with you all over there.